with you the very best parasite cleanse diet to follow when you want to recover from the parasites that cause chronic disease. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. Today, I'm going to share with you not only the best diet, but I'm going to share the guidelines of the diet, and it's the Live Disease Free diet. I'm going to share why this diet is so helpful when we want to recover from parasites. I'm going to give you lots of meal ideas, and I'm going to share with you real life successes from the wellness champions that are following this plan right now, and they are recovering from the parasites that are causing the diseases that they're dealing with. So they're also recovering from disease. So this topic is really important because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. And I always share that it's by the grace of God that I learned early on that what I was dealing with was a parasitic infestation. And there are so many diets. There's paleo, there's keto diet, there's Mediterranean diet. There's many different types of diets that we can follow. And it's true that diet is really important for health. But when we are infested with parasites, then a very specific type of diet will help us the most. And that is eating low carb. And that is the strength of the Live Disease Free diet. It also has a lot of nutrition. So the Live Disease Free diet is a diet that will give our body lots of nutrition, but it greatly reduces the food to the parasites. And you'll be really shocked at the symptom improvements that our wellness champions share because it's really profound. And the reason that we follow this diet is that number one, we don't have good tests for parasites. So our doctors usually, they might pick up 10% of the parasites that we're living with and that are making us sick. So we don't have good tests. They're not equipped to identify the parasites we're dealing with. They're not trained in that area. They really don't believe we have parasites. They don't believe parasites are in the developed countries unless we travel to an underdeveloped country. So there's many reasons why we don't get help from our doctors. They mean well, they're doing the very best with the training they've had, but it's a lost skill. Many years ago, doctors did know that parasites were a problem, but somewhere in the 1960s, there was this shift in our healthcare approach where we shifted away from trying to figure out which infectious agents were involved in our sickness to everything is autoimmune. Oh, it's your immune system attacking itself. And that has really hindered us from finding cures, because if you blame the immune system on the symptoms we're dealing with, then we just focus on shutting down the immune system, controlling the immune system, suppressing the immune system, and then we have to live with disease for the rest of our life. So today we're talking about what kind of a diet should we follow when we want to cleanse our body of parasites? And it's really important to follow this diet because if you do, you'll notice that you tolerate the treatments a lot better. You will be able to treat parasites more quickly, more aggressively. You will tolerate the treatments. They'll work better for you. It's night and day. And it's always wise to support your body to be feeling stronger, to be feeling better. That's what we all want before we start to hit the parasites. When the parasites are super active and they're producing lots of poisons, the immune system is overwhelmed, and then we just throw some poison at them, they start to make us suffer even more. And so that's not a good approach. So that is why the Live Disease Free diet is so important. I'm going to share with you another huge insight. And this is science-based. So this is not my personal opinion. So I learned years ago that low-carb diet was really important to recover from the parasites that cause chronic disease in myself, but also in my students. And that came from observing these hero doctors that were helping their patients recover from things like cancer and diabetes, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, autism, conditions like that. So there were all these different hero doctors that were, and not a lot of them, but a few, that really understood that low carb, there was something about it that it was really important. And now, just looking, as I'm researching and doing different topics, helping you guys to understand why you're sick and how to recover, I came across the understanding that a lot of the parasites that get into our body, they some of them could live in an aerobic environment or in an anaerobic environment, but when they're in our body, they really choose to ferment carbohydrates. That is their easiest source of energy. They need energy, right? And so they could use some fats, they probably could use protein, they can use different types of food for energy, but their easiest, most efficient way of getting energy is literally to use the carbohydrates, to ferment carbohydrates. And that's done in an anaerobic, that is done in an anaerobic condition. So that means without oxygen. So sorry, I was just looking to see the comments here. So in our body, it's largely an anaerobic environment for the parasites. And so they kind of switch and they find, so I'm just going to share with you a few little pieces of research that helps to confirm this. So parasites, we know that they have to adapt to their environment. So sometimes they live in environments where there's more oxygen and sometimes in less environments with less oxygen. And so these changes in their environment, they really influence how they are metabolizing food for energy. So most organisms, they rely on anaerobic glycolysis. So this means breaking down sugar, glucose in an anaerobic environment. That means in an environment without oxygen. And that's how they obtain their energy. And they share in science that it's well known that glucose utilization, so using glucose, is higher under anaerobic conditions, so in conditions where there's not a lot of oxygen versus conditions where there is a lot of oxygen. And there are several species that show a reduction in their respiratory activity along their development cycles after they start to feed on on vertebrates. So like on our blood, because we're vertebrates, we have a spinal cord. So when they're feeding on our blood, so they're relying on, again, anaerobic breakdown of carbohydrates. So they're breaking down carbohydrates in an environment with little to no oxygen to achieve their energy requirements, what they need to live. So it's really important to understand that that's why a low-carb diet is so incredibly important when you want to recover from parasites, because our parasite drugs, they will not sterilize your body from these parasites. They are helpful. And we use a combination of parasite drugs and also herbs and oxygen type therapies. The combination of all three of them together is more helpful. But again, if we don't follow the diet and if we don't support the body, then we find that the treatments just don't work the same way. So, and we're talking about worms, so they're called helminths. And it's shared in another study I looked at. Adult parasite stages are almost completely dependent upon the host's carbohydrate supply. So we're the host. We don't want to be the host, but we're the host. They're living inside of us. And so these worms, especially the adult stages, they are completely dependent on the carbohydrate supplies that are in us. And they use that for their energy. So they can live and they can reproduce inside of us. And they do that mainly through fermentation. Maybe you have had times when you get a lot of gas and bloating, and that's from these parasites fermenting carbohydrates. And that causes fermentation, causes gas and bloating. So these parasites will again adapt to the environment that they're in. So they talk about worms. They talk, so like flatworms, roundworms. They talk about protists like the plasmodium, which causes malaria. We've talked a lot about that. They talk about other smaller roundworms, the filarial worms, and ones that will affect our animals, like our dogs, for example. So all of these definitely, and they break down a lot of the carbohydrates into lactate or lactic acid. And I've shared in one of my previous videos, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, how in multiple sclerosis, we have this abundance of lactic acid inside of us. We could get lactic acid from working out, but when we're sick and disabled, it's not coming from working out. It's coming from these parasites. So I'm just giving you I'm going to share a blog post, which we always do. It'll be on our website, livediseasefree.com. And it's always at the end of the week. Make sure that you are on our list so that you get notified when I go live, but also with the new blog post that I share. So you can either listen to the shorter version of this video. I share all my notes there. You can scan topics. You'll learn a lot from our blog post, livediseasefree.com. Just look at the titles and pick and choose the subjects that are really important to you. It'll give you a lot of clarity as to why you're dealing with these symptoms and why you're sick. So, very important that we follow a diet that is low enough in the carbohydrates so that the parasites are less active. They're not going to have as much food for energy. Also, really important to know, we can't starve these parasites. If you stop eating and say, I'm just not going to eat for a day or 2 or 3, I'm going to fast, I'm just going to have water, and I'm just going to starve these parasites, are going to come out of my body. No, they won't, because your body will maintain a specific blood glucose level to keep you alive. And so your body will break down glycogen. It can break down muscle if it needs to. It will make sure that you have enough blood sugar to keep you alive, to keep your brain functioning, etc. So the parasites will still be able to live off of the glucose that's in your blood. They're not going to be as active, obviously, and you're not going to have partially digested food in your digestive tract, which will feed them. So that will all help, but you will never get rid of parasites. You've got to physically treat them. So this diet, it just gets your carbs down to, we're not worried about going into ketosis. We're not measuring our ketones and trying to get down as low as the ketogenic diet. But we have found about 30 total grams of carbs is a sweet spot, between 30 to 40. And this is for people that are dealing with chronic disease. They know they've got a parasitic infestation and they really want the greatest results and benefits. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the guidelines. Again, getting our carbs low enough, that includes our sugar, fiber, starch, all the carbohydrate, totaling 30 to 40 total grams of carbs per day. Closer to 30, you will notice more of an improvement in your symptoms. There is a keto diet, and they go even lower. They go down to approximately 20 total grams of carbs per day. And we found just getting down to 30 makes a night and day difference in our health, in our symptoms. So really important. And the nice thing about the Live Disease-Free diet is it's more enjoyable than the keto diet, I think. Obviously, we are avoiding dairy products. That does not work with parasites. But we're having a variety of low-carb vegetables, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And so we're getting a lot of nutrition, and we're keeping the carbs low enough. So let's talk about the Live Disease-Free diet guidelines. Really important. So you'll find the Live Disease-Free diet guidelines on our website, livediseasefree.com. They are free there for you to use. Go under research in the main menu. Go down to actually, I think it's the first section under the research section. And just click on that and you'll see that there's some videos. You'll see that there are the guidelines. And I'm just going to quickly go through a few guidelines here because I know that it's really important. Number 1, we have no sugar. So this is really, really important. So we avoid all sugar and sweeteners. So honey is super healthy, but it will feed the parasites. Fruit is super healthy, but the sugar in the fruit will feed the parasites. And so even things like, well, maybe I can just have some coconut water. The sugar in the coconut water will feed the parasites. So anything that tastes sweet on our tongue, we totally avoid. We do avoid stevia also because stevia, number 1, sometimes it's laced with sugar. some of the products. And then secondly, we want to get rid of our sweet tooth. We want to get rid of the cravings, because if you get rid of the cravings, then once you're well, you're not going to be drawn to those sweet processed carbohydrates, which are going to flare up any leftover infection, or it's going to bring you back to this place. Because number one, we're going to be exposed to parasites for the rest of our life. So we do want to treat them periodically, but we want to slow them down in our body. And honestly, when you get rid of your sweet tooth, you'll be very satisfied when you don't have sugar. So this includes all natural sweeteners, all processed carbs, etc., that would have sugar in them. Honey, fruit, we can have a small serving of lower carb fruits first thing in the morning, 30 minutes before our breakfast. That way the fruit digests a little bit better. There's less fermentation. But again, some of our students that are so sick, like you have no idea how sick some of the people that I talk to. I'm not going to go into details here, but I talked to 2 people today, and they're younger, one in her 20s and one just a child. Like, I just can't even explain the pain that they're going through. And they're in hospitals, going to doctors, and the doctors can't figure out what. And they're not, they've done a stool test, nothing really shows up. And these people are like on many, many medications and just suffering terribly. So the diet can help you so much if you get your carbs low enough. If you're like, well, I'll just have a little bit of cashew milk or almond milk. No, the parasites are so tiny. They don't need a lot of sugar. They don't need a lot of carbs. A small feeding once a day will keep them very happy. And smoothies too, where you're grinding up fruit, that will make your blood sugar fluctuate. That'll feed the parasites throughout the day, and they'll be very happy. So it's really important that you keep your carbs low. I promise you, like, it's life-changing. People always do that, and they share with me, even on social media, that I don't even know who they are, that has completely changed their life, just the diet. That's something you can start right away. So all sweeteners are avoided, all sugars are avoided. As far as fruit, whether you put lemon or lime juice on your salad, that's fine, fresh lemon or lime. For breakfast, maybe a half a green apple. It's a little bit more tart. A 1/4 cup of berries, so a very small amount, like half a cup of blueberries or more is a lot of sugar. A very small kiwi, but those are just a small sample of, those are just a few of the low carb fruit that you could have 30 minutes before breakfast, 1 serving. And again, if you're really sick and really suffering, there is no harm in removing the fruit for a short term, because that's just going to make the parasites less active. You can just supplement a little bit of non-GMO ascorbic acid, or you can use camu berry, which is another great source of vitamin C. All right, so you could just supplement for natural vitamin C's. So the next thing I wanted to mention is meat. And we can have meat that is not processed. So whenever humans get their hands on meat, and we make bacon and we make ham and we make sausages, usually they've added a little bit of sugar, fillers into it, especially bacon, which we wouldn't think because it's usually pretty salty. So the small amount of sugar in bacon or ham can make your neurological symptoms stronger. That's how significant it is. So when you're in this recovery phase where you're getting ready to treat and you're following the Live Disease-Free diet, you just want to avoid anything where humans have processed it. So just real meat. I mean, it's fine if it's ground beef or ground turkey or chicken where they haven't added anything to it. That's fine. But otherwise, just use real meat. It can be beef, it can be chicken, it can be turkey, it can be duck, it can be pork. There is no protein fish, all the fish are fine. Just be careful, like rotate the fish, because there's a lot of toxins in our oceans right now, unfortunately. Use some chlorella, take a few chlorella tablets when you're having fish, but it's absolutely fine to use any type of animal protein. So for a woman, usually 3 to 4 ounces, we're satisfied, and that's good. For a man, maybe 4 to 5 ounces of animal protein with every meal, or a couple of eggs for breakfast is fine. And so the meat, again, should be like not soaked in anything, no brines, no processing, because that way you're not going to be contaminated with just a little bit of sugar or honey that is going to keep perpetuating your symptoms. That means the parasites are more active. That means that when you're treating them, you're going to suffer more. And we don't want to suffer when we're treating the parasites. So as far as the eggs, some people say don't have eggs because a lot of people are allergic to eggs. If you're allergic to any food that I talk about, avoid it. So if you eat something and every time you eat it, it kind of makes you feel lousy, just avoid it for now. We do get a lot of food sensitivities because of the parasites. So it's really important to avoid the foods that you're sensitive to. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, you know that you don't tolerate raw vegetables. So it's absolutely fine to steam, saute, oven roast, or stir fry the vegetables that agree with you. And then as your gut starts to heal, you'll be able to bring back different types of raw vegetables. So listen to your body, right? Listen to what works and what doesn't work for your body. So again, the parasites, they can use some protein, but if we have moderate amounts of protein, it's not their favorite food, and people notice significant symptom improvements. If you eat a 10-ounce steak, then your body will tend to convert some of that to glucose, and that will make your blood sugar go up. That will feed the parasite. So that's why we never have large servings of meat. Even people that are on the carnivore diet, it's better if they're having more healthy fat and moderate amounts of protein versus high amounts of protein. Most people that are on the carnivore diet, they don't know this, but they're on that diet because they have a parasitic infestation and they don't tolerate different types of produce because of the parasites. And that's what some of our students have been like. So when they start, they might be on a carnivore diet and they're like, Pam, I can't eat anything. If I eat any vegetables or any fruit, I get terrible, terrible stomach pains. So then they just do all the other steps. And then as soon as they start treating, then they can start to incorporate, like literally within 3 or 4 days, they're starting to eat vegetables because they're like, I can't believe. And that can be just from one parasite drug. And they say, I just cannot believe the change in being able to tolerate these foods. So everything, this whole diet, we're thinking about the state of what's going on in our body, the parasitic infestation. So if you're not sensitive to eggs, they're super healthy. Vegetables, again, it's absolutely fine to eat them raw. If you tolerate them, steam, saute, oven roast, stir fry is fine. And we avoid vegetables that are starchy, that have a higher carb content. They kind of stick to your ribs. They make you feel really satisfied. So potatoes, white potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, corn, peas, and all the legumes, all the dried beans and the legumes, we avoid them because they contain a lot of carbohydrates that we do not digest well, but the parasites do digest them, and it's food for the parasites. So we avoid all of those vegetables. As far as dairy products, the only dairy that we will have is butter. Remember that dairy has lactose, which is a milk sugar, and then also the milk protein. It's very similar to the gluten protein, and people that have parasites are very sensitive to gluten. So there's multiple reasons why we avoid dairy while we are getting ready and treating parasites. Butter is fine. Ghee would even be better because then you're melting the fat from the dairy and you're leaving behind the milk, the little bit of milk. But most of our students don't find that a problem. So butter is fine. All the other dairy products we omit and avoid while we are getting ready to treat and we are treating. Beverages. So this is where I should mention too, like with the vegetables, let me backtrack. The vegetables, if you eat, let's say, a half a plate of cabbage, your carbs are going to be quite high. So this is where you have to kind of get to know the vegetables a little bit. So it's fine to have a little bit of cabbage, but things like broccoli is not that bad, but cabbage and Brussels sprouts, they're a little bit higher in carbs. So you can have a small serving, like half a cup is fine, but incorporate a lot of leafy greens into your day. And then you can have lots of other vegetables. There's green string beans, yellow string beans. There are different types of Chinese vegetables, the bok choy, the su choy, asparagus. All of the cruciferous vegetables are fine, like the broccoli, cauliflower, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, all collards, they're all fine, but just don't eat like a half a plate full of Brussels sprouts because the carbs will add up. Things like avocado, I know that they're higher in healthy fats, but they are also higher in carbohydrates. So we might have a slice or two, maybe a quarter of an avocado on a very large salad, and that seems to be fine. Same thing with carrots. So that's a root vegetable. We normally would avoid most root vegetables, but if we have a little bit of carrot as a garnish, or peppers, again, they're higher in sugar and carbs. So peppers and tomatoes and carrots and avocados, they're a garnish on your salad, like just for color and a little bit for flavor, but it's mostly leafy green vegetables, which are really low. So that can be different types of lettuce. It can be kale, spinach, arugula is really nice, collards. There's many different types of greens that you can have. But again, if you don't tolerate raw, make sure that you cook your vegetables. Some of the greens are really lovely when you steam them. I'm sure arugula would be fine, and also spinach. Don't eat spinach every day because it is a little higher in oxalic acid, and so we just rotate. It's good to rotate your vegetables to get a variety. And if you can, I know that if we're really sick, we can't, but if you have somebody in the family that can grow a little bit of vegetables in a small garden for you, that even just greens, it can just really help to make your food taste a lot better and give you a lot more nutrition. And so the grains, grains, let's talk about the grains for a minute. We avoid all grains. And so that would include things like processed grains, so like rice or pasta, I should say, pasta. We would definitely avoid that. Breads, any baked goods, even from nut flours. We avoid all baked goods. But when we're talking about the grains, we definitely are going to avoid like even the non-gluten grains. So for sure, all the wheats, the rye, the barley, and then also the quinoa and millet and brown rice and white rice. We avoid all the grains because we don't digest them very well when we have a lot of parasites inside of our body. And people notice significant improvements, even just getting rid of the non-gluten grains. We don't have chia seeds. If you've ever soaked chia seeds in water, you see that it kind of turns like a jello-y. That's carbohydrate soaking up water. So you don't want to have any kind of flax seeds and chia seeds. The nuts and seeds, be really careful with nuts and seeds. If you have a very small serving, maybe an eighth of a cup, once or twice a day, and if you're following it from our list that is on the cheat sheet, and you're improving, it's fine. But if you are kind of addicted to nuts and seeds and you eat too many of them, you'll feel horrible because number one, they're harder to digest and they're quite high in carbohydrates. And so that'll feed the parasites. So be very careful with nuts and seeds. Some people omit the fruit and they omit nuts and seeds, especially if they're really sick and they want to have recovery more quickly. But some people have just a very small serving and they're fine. So for snacks, you're probably wondering, what can I have for snacks? So there is a great recipe there's tons of recipes for homemade mayonnaise. That's something that you can make once a week and you can have it as a dip for vegetables. You can make a spicy mayonnaise and that adds extra calories too and extra flavor. For your meats, you can make chimichurri, which is another wonderful, tasty thing that you can add onto your meats for flavor. And it's fine to barbecue and to oven roast your meats, totally fine. Traeger, barbecue, whatever. All of that works, frying, etc. If you are going to fry, use an oil that is more heat stable, like avocado oil. Don't use the olive oil if you're using a lot of heat, like a high temperature for frying. If you're sauteing vegetables on a medium-low heat, it's fine for a little bit of olive oil, but just don't use high heat for olive oil. So again, we avoid all of the grains. That would include amaranth also, and millet and oats and barley. We talked about all of that. yeast products. So there are certain things that so mushrooms are really popular right now, even mushroom supplements. And we would avoid all of the fungal components right now, because when we're dealing with parasites, we always have fungal overgrowth. We have too much fungi growing in our body, and our bodies can be sensitive to the fungi. So mushrooms and mushroom tinctures, they're not going to cause a fungal infection in our body, but maybe the fungi can benefit from us taking in fungal components, and also our body can be sensitive to fungi. So just to be on the safe side, like if you keep things really simple, you will get success. And then the quicker you get success, the happier you will be. If you have too many variables in the mix, then you don't know what's working and what isn't. So we've always excluded all types of mushrooms, fungi, even fermented foods like kimchi and kefir that would have natural yeast. Just avoid them all for at the start. Get to a place where you're starting to feel better, and then you can always test things later if they're super healthy. And then also things like vinegar. So like the only vinegar, like we would avoid, for example, pickles and different salad dressings that would contain vinegar. And sometimes there's things like olives that are in vinegar. The only vinegar we would have when we're getting ready to treat parasites and when we're treating is like apple cider vinegar. I personally found that I felt a lot better using lemon juice and lime juice on my salads, and just not having any, like even the apple cider vinegar. So the nuts and seeds, the ones that we would avoid for sure would be peanuts, because they're notorious for having mold. And then also caution with cashews. They are a legume and they tend to not do well with people, so be very limiting with those. And pistachios for sure not. So pistachios and peanuts for sure avoid them when you're getting ready to treat parasites. And the others, remember to be really careful with nuts and seeds. So with the Live Disease-Free diet, our students really limit or avoid nuts and seeds until they're feeling a lot better. And then they might introduce a little bit of the ones that are fine. And I found too that just if you're going to have some nuts or seeds, use them raw. You can soak them, you can rinse them off, you can wash them. But just if you buy the ones that are roasted with, they call it sea salt, they very often could add a little bit of sugar in there just for flavor, and it doesn't always have to be on the label. So just be really careful. So like at Costco, you can find almonds in a bag that are raw. You can find pecans, you can find hazelnuts or filberts. Those kind of things will be fine. With the walnuts, be careful because often they have more mold on them also. So keep it simple. The only fermented food that we find that works is raw sauerkraut. And a wild ferment is going to be more health promoting for us than a store-bought. But a lot of us are really sick and disabled and we can't make our own homemade sauerkraut. So then it's fine to just buy raw sauerkraut in the refrigerated section of your store. Start with small amounts. Start with like a half a teaspoon with your meal. Don't use a lot, because when you've got a parasitic infestation in your gut, you don't want to be having a big war going on. So just start with small amounts, and you're just going to be replanting the good microbes slowly. But we would avoid all of the other ones, the kombucha, the kimchi, the kefir, all of that, because they will contain small amounts of yeast, and we want to avoid yeast. The yeast isn't going to cause a yeast infection, but it can just be another struggle for our body. It's another thing that our body has to deal with if our body is sensitive to fungi, which it would be if we're dealing with chronic disease. So we want to work up to 9 to 13 servings of low-carb vegetables per day. So our plate, 3 meals a day, our plate should be really full. So for breakfast, what I really like to have is greens. So I like arugula, and sometimes vegetables will be steamed or sauteed, or they'll be raw. If it's really tender kale, I like to eat it raw. If it's a little bit more coarse, then I would like to steam it or actually not steam it. I like to saute it, and sometimes with a little bit of onions, with salt. Make sure that you're having enough salt when you are following a low-carb diet. Himalayan or Celtic sea salt. Salt your food. Just make it taste good. It's good for you. So again, for breakfast, I like to have greens, and I pour a generous amount of extra virgin olive oil. So we're having about 3 to 4 tablespoons at least of healthy fats with our meal. And then I always just like eggs. So I'll do a couple of eggs sunny side up, but I'll put a little bit of moisture in the pan so that they're kind of like not really terribly runny, not slimy, I should say. They're not slimy. So I'll just have a couple of eggs, but you can scramble them. You can make an omelet. You can do whatever, hard boiled, soft boiled eggs, whatever, with the greens. And a little bit of sauerkraut is really nice with breakfast. It's funny I talk like that because I used to hate pickles and sauerkraut, and now, especially the homemade sauerkraut is absolutely amazing. So that would be my breakfast, and it's a plate full, right? And it takes a bit of time to eat. And so that would keep me satisfied for at least a couple of hours. If there's extra virgin olive oil left on your plate from your salad, make sure to scoop it up because that stuff is not cheap these days. So scoop it up. It gives you energy. It gives you calories. Again, if you have inflammatory bowel disease, you're not going to start with 9 to 13 servings of vegetables per day. You're going to increase them as you tolerate them. They're going to be cooked, and only eat the ones that agree with you. And you will notice that your intestines will settle down. The diarrhea will settle down. We've had that many times with our students. Most of our students do have constipation. And that's from the parasites too, either constipation or diarrhea. All right, make sure to eat a variety of vegetables so that you are on our shopping list, especially when you're working with us, there's lots of different types of vegetables that you can eat so you're not getting bored, so you're getting a variety of different nutrients. And we're having moderate amounts of animal protein. We talked about that. And we're having enough healthy fat to maintain our weight. You can use a Chronometer app, which is a free app on your phone. It's CRO, Chronometer. And you can look that up. You can download it. You can just on a day, not every day, but a day where you are not as busy, maybe you're not working and you're at home, you can just plug in what you're eating and you can track to see, am I in the target zone? Am I down to 30 to 40 total grams of carbs? Not net, but total grams of carbs. And when you get your carbs down that low, like the Chronometer can help you to make sure that you know that you're in the right zone. All right, and if you want to lose weight, then it's really easy to lose weight with this diet and you'll feel very satisfied. It's not like you're feeling deprived and you feel like you're starving. You can eat whenever you want. And if you don't want to lose weight, you have to make sure you never miss meals. 3 meals a day, 2 snacks, lots of healthy fat, platefuls of food. And maybe you're like, Pam, I feel so lousy from these parasites. I'm so sick. I don't have an appetite. I eat like a sparrow. And some of our students are like that. And so you just start following the guidelines and you eat what you can. And you'll notice that as your carbs are low enough that you're going to start getting your appetite back. You start getting mental clarity back. You're going to start getting energy. You're going to start sleeping better. And then your appetite will get better and better, and then you'll be able to eat more. So if you are like that, then maybe eat more often, maybe eat 4 meals a day. If some of our students are on, not lots of them, but a couple of them have been on a feeding tube. And if that's the case, it's very simple to take the foods that are permitted on this diet and to blend them up. That way, people are getting lots of nutrition. They're getting enough healthy fat to maintain their weight. They're getting real food instead of those, I call them chemical soup, those little cans that they give people that can't swallow. It's absolutely awful because these people, their bodies are craving nutrition. Everything in those like pre-made meals, they are completely synthetic. Everything is synthetic. It's processed carbs, processed amino acids. All the vitamins are synthetic. Nothing is from real food, and their bodies are just starving to death. So you can literally make a really nice, delicious, like creamy soup, whether you can't swallow well, whether you're on a feeding tube, and you'll notice that the inflammation starts to go down. You'll notice that you can start swallowing better and other symptoms start to subside. You do have to treat also, but it's a really big step in the recovery process. And then try to eat the vegetables and animal protein in as close to its natural state as possible. That way you avoid a lot of contamination. Some of us are really disabled, and so we really have a hard time preparing food, and it's absolutely fine if you buy vegetables that are pre-cut in the store or even frozen vegetables. That's fine. Just be careful of the quality. Make sure that it's not brown or rotting. If it's wilted and it's really brown, it's going to have a lot less nutrition. If you get those little tubs that have the greens in them, less lettuce and arugula, if you see black slime, that is bacteria that can make you really sick. So make sure to check and make sure you're not eating rotten produce or also the meat. And with the food that we prepare, we batch cook. So we cook extra so that if you do 2 or 3 meals that are extra, you've got enough food for the whole week. So maybe my husband and I will cook 2 chickens instead of 1. We could cook 1, or we could cook half a chicken for 1 meal, but we put 2 in the oven or 2 on the barbecue or the Traeger, because that way we've got leftovers and we can use them for different meals. And then if you make hamburgers, make extra hamburger patties. That way you've got extra in the fridge. If you make a salad, make a big salad so you've got salad for 2 or 3 days at least. So if there's a little bit of prep, it's not even prep, it's changing the way you do things, because it'll save you a ton of time in the kitchen. And I know some of us love to cook, but a lot of us have a lot of other things we'd rather do. So it's really nice to be able to still cook great meals, but not to have to spend all of our time in the kitchen. Avoid foods that you're allergic to or sensitive to. Listen to your body. And there's a cheat sheet that you can find again on our website under Live Disease-Free Resources in the main menu. It's resources, then go down to the guidelines. All right, so that gives you an idea of the guidelines. And so I shared with you what I have for breakfast. For lunch, I usually have just a large salad. So it won't be the same greens, it'll be different greens. And again, I'm very busy, so I literally stop. I go down to my fridge. There's a big pan of lettuce, that's salad that's made up. Put it on a plate, grab some protein that's left over. We did cook a big turkey, and I've got barbecue chicken breasts in the fridge, so we've got lots of animal protein for a few days. We really don't care if we eat the animal protein for a couple of days. You can always do different things. You can make stir fries, you can add different spices or herbs. But the key is that it's just quick and easy, and it makes you feel good. It makes you have energy, because it's feeding your body but not feeding the parasites. For supper, I tend to really like to have warm cooked vegetables. So I'll have at least 2 servings of cooked vegetables. So there's asparagus, there's green string beans, yellow string beans, there's all kinds of bok choy, which is really good, and su choy, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, which I forgot to cook actually for our Easter dinner. So I'll cook those up. Like to oven roast them, and we like to steam things. I like asparagus in the oven. Sometimes even adding a little bit of the olive oil before you roast them in the oven. And you could put slivers of garlic, make sure to salt and pepper it. And then what's really nice is to add a little bit of zest of lemon or lime onto the finished vegetables. Delicious. It just kind of really picks it up. You can add that into a little bit of salad dressing if you make it yourself also. So, and there's a zester grater, which is looks like a ruler, and you can zest just like a tiny little grater that looks the size of a ruler. And my son-in-law got me onto that. Another thing that's really amazing is to get a mortar and pestle. And I don't have it here, but you can watch in my other videos, you'll see. And you literally can just take different herbs like fennel and coriander, and you can roast them and you can crush them, and the flavor is so much better when you do that. It takes like a minute or 2 to do that, and it can really just like make your meal from boring and ordinary to oh my gosh, I'm a gourmet chef. And those are things that I learned from my son-in-law, who's an amazing chef. So that gives you some ideas. For snacks, like a small serving of the nuts and seeds that are allowed on the guidelines. Or what's really good is to have that homemade mayonnaise, because again, the parasites don't like the fat as much, and you will notice significant improvements if you follow what I share. So dipping a few low-carb vegetables. Celery seems to be quite low, and also cucumbers are low. Carrots, be careful, just have like a little couple of pieces. I wouldn't do a ton of peppers, or remember, that's a garnish, right? The peppers, the tomatoes, the carrots, and the avocado are garnishes because the carbs will add up really quickly, and then you're not going to notice any symptom improvements. So again, this diet is really, really important, because if we don't reduce the food to the parasites, we're not going to tolerate the treatments well. The parasites are going to be harder to treat, and we can't recover as quickly. It's going to slow us down, and we want to get back to life. We want to get back to doing the things we love to do. So speaking of that, I'm going to end here. I'll answer a couple of your questions, but I just wanted to share, these are real live wellness champions that were diagnosed with chronic disease, or they were on the verge of being diagnosed with chronic disease. So where they're like, I have all of these really scary symptoms. They're trying to figure out what I have. I don't want a diagnosis. I want to recover. I want to get on with my life. I want to close this chapter of my life. And then others that have different types of disease, a lot of them multiple sclerosis, but other diseases also. So I'm just going to share with you some of their posts, recent posts of when they were just more following the diet, so that you can see the possibilities for you. So the first one, I'm going to keep it anonymous because these are students that are in the program right now. So she shared, Pam, I am noticing more strength in my leg, strong reduction in muscle spasms and stiffness, less anxiety, slight improvement in bladder function, and improved mental clarity. And this is just from the diet. And I should say this is from a gentleman, and he's in Europe. And he, like, the wellness champions are amazing. So this gentleman does not speak English. He has friends that do speak English. They're helping him and his wife. He's recovering from MS. And what he has done is, just with the diet, he's had more strength in his leg, less spasms, less stiffness, less anxiety, and improved bladder function and mental clarity, just from lowering the carbs enough so the parasites are less active. And he's quite disabled with multiple sclerosis. He's getting ready to treat. The next student is shared, my success this week is continuing to fine-tune the Live Disease-Free diet, what I eat, and I'm feeling a little stronger in my walking. And I've also had less edema in my feet and my ankles. So that's another parasite symptom, that we get swelling in our feet and in our ankles. And that goes away when we treat, but it can also improve when we are lowering our carbs enough. The next student shared, and she's getting ready to treat, I'm doing better, and I am better at getting out of the shower by myself. So more strength, more coordination. The next student shared, my mobility has improved noticeably. Balance is almost back to normal these days. Less pain in my rib cage area. And honestly, I didn't even notice it until it was gone. My mental health and resilience seems to be in a much better place as well. The next student shared, so she was following the diet, and this is where, when they're in the Live Disease-Free Academy, when they're in the plan and I'm supporting them. So she thought she was following the diet well, and she gave me what she was eating. There's a workbook, we're building our plan, and I gave her feedback, and she made the adjustments, and then she rechecked her work on the chronometer, and she said, I changed my chronometer to calculate total carbs as you instructed, Pam, and then it states that my daily carbs are around 35 total grams of carbs per day, and I'm feeling 80% better. My numbness is now mild rather than severe, and she used to have this electric shock, like when you bend your neck down, that's part of multiple sclerosis, and she said it's a slight buzz now, and it's not that uncomfortable big electric shock running down her back, which is awesome. And this is all through the diet, and this is getting ready to treat. And it's amazing. Like, I never get tired of hearing these successes. I'm going to go to your questions right now. If you have any, let's see. There we go, and pull them up here. There we go. Awesome. So What do you mean feeling better? I feel better. Let's see. Oh, what do you mean feeling? Maybe I have to start at the top here. Let's see. Yes, that's right. So, have you ever tried cleansing by consuming baking soda? David is asking. I personally wouldn't do that. I have followed like one doctor who's in Italy, and he was actually helping to treat cancer with baking soda. So he would flush the tumors. He would put a catheter up to the tumor or inject sodium bicarbonate dilute solutions, and that would help to dissolve tumors. But when people have a lot of parasites, the sodium bicarbonate, like you're going to have to take a lot of sodium bicarbonate, and you end up with more edema. So you'll find out because you're going to be holding a lot more water. So it's not the answer. It really is not the answer. The oxygen therapies would be definitely more helpful for that, but not the baking soda. If you're targeting an area of infection like that doctor is doing, that's totally different. Hi, James. Great to meet you here. And another James, you're so welcome. Thank you for all your kind words. So you make it, if you can easily make your own bacon. Just slice pork belly, lightly salted, and fry it. Much better than store-bought. Absolutely. Then you're not getting all of the other preservatives also. And then James shared, allergy is Herc's reaction by parasites. You are correct. Well, we can become sensitive to certain foods because if we have leaky gut. So our immune system protects us from things that should not be in our bloodstream. There's this barrier it's the intestinal lining that really prevents certain things from going into our blood. And so when we have parasites, we end up with leaky gut. And then certain foods and different parasites will move into the blood, and our immune system will go after it. So we could become sensitive to foods that we shouldn't be sensitive to. And a lot of the lower grade food sensitivities, they do clear up when we heal the gut. I would never, ever test an anaphylactic sensitivity because they tend to not go away. And you don't want to take a risk of losing your life. So there's people that have, not had a peanut butter sandwich for years, and they're like, oh, that was when I was a kid. I heard one young girl, and then she was at a grad getting ready for the graduation ceremonies, and she had a peanut butter sandwich, and she died. So with anaphylaxis, be really careful. But if it's just a mild food sensitivity, a lot of times those will correct once you heal the gut, treat the parasites. And again, going low carb, you're just going low carb long enough, this slow, you're going long enough so that you actually feel like a normal person, that you feel amazing, and for maybe at least a couple of months, because that way you know that you've really knocked back eggs and larvae and they're hiding under biofilms. But you don't want to just rush into increasing your carbs. And then when you have been symptom-free I did way longer than 2 months. I followed because I didn't even know what we know right now, and I didn't have the parasite drugs, etc. So I probably didn't eat higher carb for years. But once you have really recovered and you've incorporated the oxygen therapies and also the herbs and the parasite drugs, then you can start with, a little bit of fruit, and you can add a little bit of brown rice or quinoa. Don't go too overboard. And if you've treated well enough, you'll notice there's no change in your symptoms. You'll feel absolutely fine. And if you haven't treated enough, you'll know, okay, I got more work to do. So that's the key. And once you have treated enough, you will be able to tolerate more carbs again. James, sulfur is great at detoxing, which is why eggs. So there's a lot of great nutrients in eggs. Joanne, what vitamins are good? We don't recommend a lot of supplements, just a plant-sourced multivitamin mineral from plants would be good. Multivitamin mineral, a little bit of extra calcium because our food is quite deficient in calcium. If we are anemic, which is really common from the parasites, then yes, an iron supplement, but not the high doses of iron. Just, you can find them in health food stores where there's maybe 30 some milligrams, and there will be other cofactors in with it. So just the basics, right? And if you need to support your thyroid. Not everybody does, but some people do, or their adrenals, you would support them. But we don't take a lot of supplements. So there is, if you go on our website, you'll see under supplements or under order shop, you'll see that there is Manatech, and I use their vitamins. Their Phytomatrix, it's from plants, Phytomatrix. You can pick your country, or you can go to look for Garden of Life, My Kind. So they have different lines. They're all synthetic except for the My Kind, and you can just order their multivitamin mineral. Those are about the two that I found that are quite natural, like they're the most natural that I have found. There could be others that I'm just not aware of, but a lot of them are synthetic, or they have taken synthetic and they've added a bunch of yeast and then they call it natural. And they've thrown in some vegetables and some fruit and they call it natural. But really the label, when they're saying, you know, so many milligrams of vitamin C or vitamin B, vitamin D, etc., that's all coming from the synthetic that they added into the mix before. They hope that the different fungi have fermented it into plant source. So plant source is really important. So let's see. Is calcium, magnesium good to take? Yeah, so try to find it from plant. So this is where if you use like calcium citrate or calcium from algae. So algae cal is quite popular, or calcium citrate. And if you do calcium citrate, usually there's some magnesium and there's some vitamin D with that also. You're very welcome. Lacey, you want to do this, but the diet seems so limited. It does at first, maybe the first week, but you'll find that it's incredibly satisfying. Like and there's some people that I work with that didn't like vegetables. They didn't eat vegetables before. And after like 2 or 3 weeks, they're like, I love this way of eating. It's so fresh. It's so tasty. I'm satisfied. I love vegetables now. I promise you, your taste buds will change. So the nice thing about this is it's not a diet where you're suffering, where you have to give up things. Yeah, sugar and caffeine and alcohol, those would be the hardest things. But you'll notice that payback within 1 to 2 weeks is so huge, and that will really help you to treat the parasites more effectively. You're very welcome. Thank you for all your kind words. We would avoid all juices. Somebody's asking about a specific juice. All the juices will have sugar in them. The parasites don't care where they get the sugar, whether it's from juice, from a cookie, from potato chips, from baked goods, honey, fruit. It will feed the parasites. You're very welcome. You're trying so hard to get past the parasites, past the parasite land, very difficult. That's why it's really important, Dee, to follow the steps in the Live Disease-Free plan, because you will have the most success. If you just focus on just trying to treat, you're not going to have the same success. All right, a couple more questions and then I'm going to let you guys go here. When I use, I think you said bic acid, I think you mean bile acid from your doctor. Parasites, I'm not sure what you mean by that. A lot of parasites are coming out of the bowel movements. Only parasites in 4 hours. The company is Yarrow. I guess it's called bic acid factor. So there are bile acids. Oh, okay. So apparently bile acids are toxic to parasites. So he's noticing that parasites are coming out while he's taking them. Maybe he's had his gallbladder removed, or maybe he's just has his gallbladder is suffering. So really important that, you support. If you need to support your gallbladder, bile acids are fine. But it's very, very important that you decrease the carbs. That is, like, I have just given you like an incredible gift. This comes from years and years of experience for myself, but also coaching many people. We've got lots of successes. If you want to hear the students that have graduated, go to livediseasefree.com, go to our Live Disease Free YouTube channel. Listen, like it's life changing. Like the diet is like shockingly helpful. You don't have to buy a program. You don't have to, spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplements. Just start by decreasing the carbs. You do have to treat them. They're not going to go away, but that is going to make them more quiet, and then you can treat them. And yes, there are lots of herbs in the health food stores that you can use. There are different blends which have usually things like black walnut and wormwood and cloves. You can try that. You will probably pass worms, but if you have chronic disease, you will probably find that you still have your disease. We found that they're not enough. If they were, I would share that with you. So if you do pass some worms, but you're like, Pam, I still have the disease, then make sure to watch my masterclass training. On it, I share all the steps we take to recover. So I go more in detail with the diet, but then I also talk about all the other steps that we take to treat the parasites. I share a lot of case studies. I share a lot of the different types of infections we're dealing with. And then if you really believe that you're dealing with parasites and you want support, make sure to fill out the form and then book a time with me. You'll get an email. Make sure you watch the coach-a-thon before you book a time in my calendar, because that way we're going to go right to you. You'll have really good questions. It explains the whole process, like how we get ready to treat, how we access treatments and access practitioners. What do we need in practitioners? All of that is explained in great detail in the masterclass training, but then also especially in the coach-a-thon. And then you can join, you can become a wellness champion, and you can get your health and your life back this year, and you can join these amazing wellness champions that I shared with you. So if you enjoy what I share with you, and if this really excites you and inspires you, and you want to help us get the word out, please like, share, and subscribe, and help us get the word out so that we can help bring change. We want our doctors to embrace this. We want our doctors to be able to have the skills again to treat parasites early so that we don't end up with such horrible, debilitating diseases where we suffer beyond measure. We want our life back and we want change. So help us bring change by sharing and liking. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Take care and bye-bye for now.